Welcome to episode 7 of Politically Charged. I am, of course, still here as your host. My name is Jack Berlin, as always. And today, very special announcement before I get into the nitty-gritty of the episode. I started a website that I have built from scratch. Politicallycharged.us. Go, sign up, never miss anything politically charged related. And even, I think there's a little widget at the bottom that keeps track of my tweets, so never miss anything about my Twitter either. So go ahead, check that out. Today, in this episode, I covered, because I don't have a guest again, trying out the new format, covered healthcare. It was defeated, maybe coming back up for a vote real soon. The Trump travel ban, which was reinstated by the Supreme Court. Trump's inability, or maybe ability, to unite people on Twitter, believe it or not. And finally, in Trump meeting Putin for the first time this week on the sidelines of the G20 summit, and the White House's attempt to suppress voter registration. All of that and more covered in this episode. Again, make sure to check out the website politicallycharged.us because .com would have cost me $1,000. And as always, make sure to follow me on Twitter at Jack Berlin. Subscribe to this podcast so that you never miss anything. Go check out the website. And with that, let's get going. All right, I want to start real quickly with some house cleaning announcements that didn't really make it into the intro. I have officially changed up the format of this podcast, Politically Charged, due to actually a pretty big amount of feedback from people I know, some people I don't, that they liked the solo version of the pod better. And to be honest, I have to agree. I feel like I was able to get more in-depth into the issues and try to break it down for people that are maybe more casual about politics and kind of help them understand what's going on. So, as of right now, the plan is to continue with the mainly solo pod, start bringing in guests for the last 15, 20 minutes of each episode. That way I can get through maybe 25, 30 minutes of strictly facts and a little bit of opinion. And then for the last 15, 20 minutes, have an open conversation, which is really what this podcast is all about. So as of right now, that's the plan. If you like it, let me know. If you don't, let me know. You can hit me up on Twitter, the website, preferably the website. Please go to the website. If you've got my Snapchat phone number, you can hit me up on that, obviously. But that's the plan for right now. And I actually think I'm going to stick with this format. So that is more than enough on announcements regarding this podcast. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of this political week. And it was absolutely crazy. First, let's start with the big news of last episode. Let's kind of continue that conversation. Healthcare. As of right now, the Senate healthcare bill has stalled. And unless Mitch McConnell and his Republican cohorts are willing to make some seemingly pretty big concessions to moderates and maybe some independent right-leaning Democrats, it looks like the bill's been defeated, which is great. As of right now, it has not been brought to a vote like it was supposed to be. It is being revised to hopefully draw in more moderates like Dean Heller of Nevada, who were unable to get on board with this past version because of big cuts to taxes and the amount and type of people who would be covered. So one of the big issues was the tax on investment income for the wealthy. Now this tax helps to subsidize insurance for lower income people. Repealing this tax would have put the United States government at a loss of $172 billion. Billion with a B. That almost entirely goes to subsidizing insurance for lower income people. This is one of those things that I was talking about last week, how the bill seemed kind of constructed to hurt the poor and help the rich, how the resources shifted. This tax staying in the bill would be a great thing. Hopefully the bill doesn't pass. I do not want to see the bill pass at all. If this tax can stay in, that would be great. The subsidies involved in the bill are starting to look like Affordable Care Act, which is pretty funny because Republicans really ripped those subsidies. And both versions, both the House and the Senate bill, provide tens of billions of dollars in assistance to health insurance companies. Granted, the House and Senate Republican versions of this have been much less generous. The funds would still be used to stabilize markets, hold down premiums, and again, these payments are the same type of thing that Republicans attempted to make fun of Obama for in Obamacare. So that pretty much covers all of healthcare that I wanted to cover in this episode. I just kind of wanted to continue on the conversation that we had last week about healthcare. But the one big thing you need to take out of all of this is that now Republicans, Trump, and people like Senator Ben Sasse of Nebraska are talking about this idea of repealing and then replacing instead of repeal and replace in the same bill. This is significant because repealing the bill would essentially throw the entire healthcare system into chaos. At very least, repealing and replacing would get rid of Obamacare and immediately replace it with a new solution, with a new type of healthcare. Repealing then replacing would be disastrous. And it's an idea that Republicans had, up until a couple days ago, completely ignored. Well, serious Republicans. But now you have Trump tweeting about it, and Trump's Twitter this past week has been crazy, but we're going to touch on that later. This is something that absolutely cannot happen. It would throw the entire system into chaos. Really, I tried to do some research and figure out what exactly would happen. A lot of it is just speculative. Nobody really knows the full extent of how this would harm really the entire healthcare system. So that repeal then replace is absolutely something that cannot happen. And if you're going to get one issue that drives you into getting involved or makes you contact a senator or representative, that's it. Absolutely cannot happen. But enough about healthcare. Moving on to really probably the biggest news of the week, the Trump travel ban being allowed to be reinstated by the Supreme Court. Thankfully, the Supreme Court is finally at full strength. Granted, full strength means that Neil Gorsuch is on the court. But either way, they allowed a partial version of Trump's latest travel ban to take effect. They will review the case again in the fall, but this ban still takes aim at Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen. It takes aim at those 6 countries, all of which are majority Muslim countries. And yet Republicans have the audacity to suggest that this is not a Muslim ban. I really don't know how they're going to defend that, but it is in effect for 90 days. Now, who's in and who's out because of this ban? People with bona fide relationships. Now, the court did not specifically determine what bona fide relationships means, but anybody with bona fide relationships are allowed into the country. Since then, the administration has clarified parents and in-laws, spouses, children, sons and daughter-in-laws, or siblings, whole or half, are allowed in. Noticeably missing from that list, grandparents, grandkids, aunts, uncles, cousins. Everybody else, out. Not allowed in. For refugees, it depends. Refugees is really tricky, and I'll do my best to break it down, but I'm not entirely sure how clear it's going to be because it's not really clear to anyone. Refugees are out for 120 days. The law or the travel ban does allow for case-by-case exceptions and refugees that have already been admitted to stay admitted to the country. They won't be sent out after having already gone through the process. The idea of bona fide relationships still applies, but it doesn't make that much of a difference in the case of refugees because about 40% of refugees don't have a family here. So those bona fide relationships that would boost their chances or really help them get to America doesn't matter. Moving on, as I try to flip my notes, I really got to get a new notepad. Moving on, the State Department says if a refugee or somebody attempting to come to this country has a relationship with a resettlement agency, that does not qualify them even with a bona fide relationship. I mean, that's just ridiculous, and it only gets worse from there. It cuts the refugee program in half from the level of 110,000 that Obama set to 50,000. 50,000 refugees out of a world full of 7-point-some billion people. Only 50,000 refugees are allowed in. And on top of all that, that 50,000 number is going to be reached in a week or so. So though this ban was delayed for several months, it still does fairly severe damage to refugees looking to come to this country. But we'll get more on that in a second. Students and workers will still be allowed in. Tourists and businessmen, it also depends. It's somewhat murky. Those from the 6 countries really depend on bona fides again. But someone like a professor or Really, yeah, someone like a professor traveling in for a lecture at a university would be allowed. For new immigrants, this means that it depends how they come in. Most new immigrants are granted access. I don't know what phrase to use, but most new immigrants are granted access on employment or having family in the country, both of which would qualify them under the bona fide relationships and other things to come in. And then, of course, green card holders, people with dual nationality, diplomats, all of them are allowed. Now, the big important thing about this Trump travel ban going back into effect, or at least partially into effect, is that the whole point of the ban is to review and develop extreme vetting strategies. Now, nobody in the administration has provided any evidence on how this exactly is going to protect citizens other than it keeps people of 6 majority Muslim nations out. They're kind of looking past the fact that no Americans have been killed in a terrorist attack by anyone from those 6 countries on American soil since at least 1975. So the obvious question to that is, what exactly do we need extreme vetting for in this 120-day, 90-day ban if the system we have now hasn't given rise to an attack since 1975, which, is like 42 years ago. 42 years ago. But, it's not like the Trump administration has made much of their name making sense thus far, so why start now? Most importantly, those fleeing the civil war or other violence in their countries will most likely be barred for 120 days. 120 days. Refugees attempting to flee civil war or other kinds of violence in their countries, in their districts, wherever they live, will most likely be barred for the full 120 days. This ban, I'm obviously not a big fan of this ban. I think the majority of the country isn't a big fan of this ban. But there is a segment that is. And to me, this ban hurts the idea that all of us, regardless of political background or whichever way you lean, it hurts the idea we all love to think, but that we completely take for granted. That America is this shining city on a hill. We're the world leader. We're the example to the world. This is how a country should be run. That it's a place where if you put in the work, you can achieve anything. But this ban kind of signifies the opposite. It signifies the American dream is contingent on appealing to the Republican base. Because truthfully, this is a Muslim ban. You can't ban 6 majority Muslim countries and not call it a Muslim ban. And now if somebody wants to correct me if I'm wrong on this, but pretty sure Trump even called it a Muslim ban during the campaign. So how the Supreme Court allowed this to go through, I don't know. But I do know the American dream should never be contingent on appealing to one political party's base. Denying access to these people looking to make a better life for themselves because of civil war or violence is ridiculous. Especially when the main reason for this ban is to review and develop extreme vetting strategies to keep America safe. America has been safe for 42 years. Why do we need to change the system? Or why do we need to stop the system to develop more extreme strategies? This whole idea of the travel ban, like I said, it completely takes aim at the American dream. It chips away at it. And for the most part, it's being implemented to play to his base so that he can get reelected in 3.5 years. The whole idea of it is ridiculous. And we'll see how it affects people in the days and weeks and months to come. Hopefully, in October, when the Supreme Court hears the arguments for and against, they will come to their senses and decide against the travel ban. But for right now, all we can do is really make sure that our representatives know how against this we are. But moving on, much lighter note, Trump has taken over Twitter again. Woke up today, checked Twitter like I normally do. Twitter is completely out of its mind right now. So much crap is going on over there. But somehow Trump has managed to unite the right and the left media through his use of Twitter. Now, I wouldn't have thought in a million years that Trump would be able to unite really anyone, except for his crazy base. But he's done it. He's somehow united the media. woke up this morning, there's a video that he posted. The president of United